Hey, I'm talking, Alana. Can you hear me? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right, good. I'm gonna go silent and wait for folks to join. We'll start live at testing 1, 2, 3. This is the second test, making sure you can hear me on Facebook Live, Alana. Just confirm by text. We're 8 minutes to going live, doing one last audio test. One last audio test, testing 1, 2, 3. All right, good evening. You are looking live into the Greensboro location of the Crooked Tail Cat Cafe. Karen Stratman on the camera. You'll meet Karen in a minute, but as the camera pans around, you're seeing some of the awesome young feline residents at the Cat Cafe. Of course, there's a location in Winston-Salem too. So when Karen signed on for this, she said she was going to be in Greensboro tonight. We said we can handle a Greensboro Cat Cafe as good as a Winston-Salem one. So welcome everybody. My name is Mike Wakeford, and happy Women's Equality Day. This is a special Women's Equality Day, August 26th, 2020, because it is the, as I think you know, the 100th anniversary of the day that the 19th Amendment, which on paper at least, guaranteed that one could not be denied the vote on the basis of sex, was certified by the United States Secretary of State, and thereby became the law of the land and went into the U.S. Constitution. This is a real pleasure to be with you tonight, to have Rachel Corbman and Wendy Rouse and Karen Stratman and all of her cats with us, and to all those on Facebook, thank you so much for joining us. I am going to start by doing a screen share and just making a couple of announcements and letting you know how this program is going to unfold. So here we go to back to screen share, and going to move one slide ahead. I want to let you know before we get started with our program, I'll let you know about some great programs that we have coming up here at MUSE Winston-Salem in the coming days and weeks. Next Thursday night, we would love to have you join again on Facebook Live for a program that we're co-sponsoring with Triad City Beat. It's called Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and 100 Days Since George Floyd. This is on next Wednesday is actually the 100-day mark since the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. That event and the protests and national conversation that it has sparked have changed so many American communities, and certainly our own. It's to mark that occasion, we thought it was an appropriate time to pause for a moment and start to think historically in a speculative and initial way about what these last 100 days have meant and will mean as historians and history-minded people start to assess the impact on this community. And so we're gathering four participants in the larger Black Lives Matter and racial justice movement, 2 from Winston-Salem, 2 from Greensboro, to come together with us for a moderated panel discussion. So more information on Facebook about that, and we would love to have you with us. On September 24th, the Willingham Story Slam at MUSE Winston-Salem is back. We had a wonderful story slam right before the pandemic hit, and then we've been figuring out how to go forward. Well, we've decided to go virtual, and on September 24th, we'll be back for a virtual story slam. The theme will be the masks we wear, and this will be a free event, and you'll be welcome to come as simply as an audience member, or come with a story to tell. More information about registering for that will be available on Facebook and on our social media channels soon, within a day or two, but we'd love to see some of you at that event. couple others. We're really excited about this event. We're announcing it tonight for the first time. As I mentioned, we are keenly aware that the victorious event of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which we are marking today, was not a total victory by any means. And as has been well recognized in recent days, with the 19th Amendment, certainly came the ballot for a large number of American women. But for so many American women, particularly Black women and other women of colors, the achievement of the ballot and ballot access would wait for years, if not decades. We want to make sure as we're marking this important event today and in the coming weeks between now and the fall election, that we're acknowledging and studying and shedding light on the fact that the fight for voting rights continued for Black women all the way to 1965 and the Voting Rights Act, and in many ways continues still today. We are excited to be partnering with the Women's Fund of Winston-Salem on a book club that is going to focus on a brand new book due for release on September 8th by Dr. Martha S. Jones, historian at Johns Hopkins University. The book is Vanguard: How Black Women Broke Barriers, Won the Vote, and Insisted on Equality for All. We are just about to roll out registration information in the next day or so. So we ask that you tune back to the Women's Fund or our Facebook page, and there will be registration information and the opportunity to buy the book at a discounted rate through bookmarks. And some more information too about some really great events that are going to make that particular reading club a really special event. So we hope you'll keep your eye out for more information about that. In a similar vein, we're also partnering with the Women's Fund to support this really cool student project taking place over at Wake Forest University. Helen Hale, a really terrific undergraduate student at Wake Forest, is working on a podcast project that will be built out of stories of women, of a diverse cross-section of women in our community sharing their stories of their first voting experiences. We have information about this on our Facebook page. You can see that Helen's asking to be contacted at her email address and would love to talk with you. So just wanted to put a pitch in for that. And finally, I'll come back to that in a second. I am gonna stop the screen share here, and we're getting close to a chance to hear from our guests. But just really quickly, I want to let you know on Facebook that my colleague Alana Melcher-Holderfield is on the Facebook page and monitoring your questions and comments. And so as the program goes on, we absolutely welcome you to post questions to Facebook, and Alana will relay them to me during the course of the program, and at an opportune time, I will try to communicate some of those questions to our guests. We may, for the most part, wait until the end of the program to turn to questions, but if there's an opportune moment to pipe one in, we will do that as well. So please let us know what you're thinking and questions you're wondering as the program goes on. I want to now just introduce our guests. I'll introduce each here at the beginning so that once we get rolling, we won't have to interrupt with introductions. So I first want to introduce Dr. Rachel Corbman. Dr. Corbman received a PhD in Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies from Stony Brook University in May 2019 and is a visiting assistant professor in the Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies Department at Wake Forest University. Her research and teaching interests span feminist studies, queer studies, disability studies, the public and digital humanities, and the history of gender and sexuality. In addition to her scholarly research, Rachel is a public historian. Most recently, she curated The Wide World of Lesbian Cats, an exhibition at the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Community Center in New York that excavates a history of cat memes in lesbian, feminist, and queer print and digital culture from the 1970s to the present. Welcome, Dr. Corbman. Dr. Wendy Rouse is a historian whose scholarly research focuses on the history of women and children in the United States during the Progressive Era. Rouse has previously published 2 books on the history of women and children in the Progressive Era. The latest book, her own hero, The Origins of the Women's Self-Defense Movement, by NYU Press, examines the political and physical empowerment of women through the practice of boxing, jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu in the early 20th century. Her earlier book, The Children of Chinatown, Growing Up Chinese American in San Francisco by UNC Press, considers the significant role of children in the history of Chinese America during the era of Chinese exclusion. And I think I failed to note that you are a historian and faculty member at San Jose State University. Welcome, Dr. Rouse. And finally, Karen Stratman. Ever since she was a child, Karen Stratman had a passion for animals, which led her to get 2 degrees in animal-related science fields. She graduated from the University of Florida with a master's in entomology, but ever since graduation, she's had an insatiable appetite for running and managing companies. Her passion for animals goes far beyond just the love of cats, because she lives a plant-based lifestyle and believes in doing no harm to living creatures. In 2017, Karen decided to commit her full attention to opening the first cat cafe in North Carolina. By November that same year, she was able to get the doors at the Crooked Tail Cat Cafe open, and the rest is one for the history books. So welcome all, and we'll get started. First things first, I wanna greet Karen and some of her cats, maybe just for a minute, and then we'll turn to Wendy's presentation. So Karen, can you, if possible, can you introduce us to a cat or 2, and so we can just all ogle them together? All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just kind of show you around the room. Let me flip the camera around here. But walking towards the camera right now, this is a Miss Tinkerbell. She's about 16. She actually is a house cat, so meaning she is the only one here that's not for adoption. So we decided to keep her because she's a little bit older, and we just want her to live out her golden years the best she can. And then right over here is Moxie. She's single and looking, but she's a really sweet girl. She really loves some string toys. She likes this black chair here. And then across the room, we have some more kitties. This guy here, his name is Sriracha, but we like to call him Spicy Boy because sometimes he is a little spicy. Oh, there he goes, sniffing the camera. But he's about a year old. He is also single and looking. He also loves string toys, and he really likes to eat because he's definitely plumped up here. And then over here is Miss Aurora. I like to call her Miss Aurora, but she just goes by Aurora sometimes too. And her favorite pastime activity is swinging from our curtains and ruining our curtain rod. Yeah, we can't have nice things around here. I hear some hissing in the background. That's probably Spicy. But this is Winton. He is a handsome tuxedo. He's about, I think he's 5 or 6, also single and looking. Yeah, there's some commotion going on across the corner. Yep.
Oh boy.
No, not a dull day in the cat cafe. That's Spicy. And then this is
Wow.
Miss Ivy. She's a little bit shy, but she was actually the only cat that came back to us after like the pandemic and we reopened and everything. So we're hoping she gets a home soon, but she's a little shy, so she's a little bit more challenging to adopt, but they always find their homes eventually. But that's about all I have for now. I guess I'll just share some feed. I'll let you go on to introducing the rest of the guests. All
right, great. Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome.
So now on to the historical substance of the program. I'm not sure I even officially said the name of the program, although you all know why you're here. Radical Cats Live, the feline history of women's empowerment. So now we're going to move to 2 presentations, first by Dr. Rouse, then Dr. Corbman. Dr. Rouse is going to talk to us about cat symbolism and the way that cats were used both by anti-suffragists and suffragists during the pre-19th Amendment period, and explore how the cat contributed to different gendered constructions. So, Wendy.
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and nice to meet the cat, I guess, as well. So normally I focus on the queer history of the suffrage movement. So this is exciting to take this foray into the complex history of suffragists and cats. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you all. Okay, can you see that okay?
Great.
All right, perfect. So as you know, the campaign for women's right to vote was quite contentious, both here in the United States and in the United Kingdom. And although women insisted on their right to political power and to the vote, anti-suffragists tried to thwart their efforts. They mocked them, they trivialized the campaign for the vote, and they used images of cats and conflated suffragists with cats in an attempt to discredit them and the suffrage movement itself. So you may have seen an image something like this before. Cats were typically associated with domesticity and femininity, and they were viewed as domestic creatures confined to the home, much like middle-class women at the time were supposed to be. So anti-suffragists feared that if women won the right to vote, it would disrupt this kind of natural balance between the sexes, and men would be emasculated, forced to do domestic chores like washing the dishes and taking care of the baby, while meanwhile mother would be away and working on the suffrage campaign. So if you see the sign in the back here, it says everybody works but mother, because she's a suffragette. And so we can see here the cat in the bottom, the cat representing the domestic realm, and the cat is obviously not happy either that mother is a suffragette. So anti-suffragists, through their literature, their propaganda, began to associate women with cats, and specifically suffragists with cats, depicting them as whiny and weak kittens often, and other times as passive and fickle adult cats who really don't care. The cat image was used to generally minimize suffragist demands and make them seem ridiculous, and their request for political power kind of hilarious. And there was even a whole market for these anti-suffrage cats through a variety of souvenirs like the ceramic cat or postcards. There's a lot of different postcards. There's another one. So what you need to know, right, is that suffragists are out there, right? They're trying to hold the government accountable. They're trying to protest for their rights. And there was even a group of suffragists at one point, this was in the United Kingdom, that heckled leader Lloyd George at the time. And he turned to them and said to the crowd, ignore those suffragists, those meowing cats, right? No, he's just basically dismissing them. Nobody needs to care about them. They're nobody, they're just these meowing cats. And some suffragists inverted this idea of suffragists as passive and fickle, and instead suggested that suffragists were actually aggressive, that they were single-minded, focused only on the vote, and dismissed them as old cats. So this association here was meant to describe suffragists as these bitter old spinsters who fought with each other and against the government in an effort to get their way. And this is kind of familiar because there was an older image of suffragists as these mannish, man-hating spinsters. So this association with the cat kind of equated with that earlier image and was just a minor adjustment to that old stereotype. Suffragists were definitely focused on winning the vote. They wanted to win, and they had a variety of methods, right? You know about the lobbying, the petitioning, protesting, picketing, speaking out, giving speeches on the street corners and from cars. And their political opponents began using the cat image to suggest that they were actually maybe wild and out of control, like feral cats. You even see the use of the term catty for the first time, right? So we see in this poem, it says, I'm a catty suffragette. I scratch and fight with the police. So long as they withhold the vote, my warfare will not cease. So British suffragettes especially were significantly challenging gender norms. They're adopting these rather militant for that time period protest strategies. They're damaging public property, they're chaining themselves to public buildings, and they're trying to draw attention to their cause in a variety of ways. So when the police arrived to arrest them, they even physically fought back, which is what my earlier research was on jujitsu and boxing and suffragists. So the anti-suffragists aren't really sure how to respond to this because it doesn't fit with that whole passive image of the cat. So they start to describe them as catty and suggest instead that they fight like wild cats. Right, so then we see this image shifting and more the domesticated cat becomes the wild cat, the tomcats, feral cats, clawing, scratching, fighting back, getting into literal scraps with the police and often suffering a beating themselves. Now, suffragists were arrested, they were sent to prison, and we And you've probably heard some of the harrowing tales of their hunger strikes in prison and the way that they starve themselves to try to protest their conditions. Many of them were force-fed by prison officials. The officials would put a rubber tube down their throat and try to forcibly feed them with milk and raw eggs. And the British government did this in part because they were afraid that some of the hunger striking suffragists might die while they were in prison and then become martyrs essentially to the cause, and blaming the British government. So in 1913, the government passed the Prisoners' Temporary Discharge for Ill Health Act, otherwise known as the Cat and Mouse Act. So once again, we see the cat imagery here, but this time it's shifted. This time, the suffragists are not the cat. Instead, suffrage organizers took the negative image of the cat and used it to recast the cat as a symbol of the government, of the British government. So now the British government is this predatory, vicious cat preying on suffragists who are represented as the mouse. So the cat had, in all of these instances, come to represent the violent struggle of women for the fight for political equality. But I'd like to pause for a moment because it seems to me that the suffragists, right, are getting this bad association. Cats are getting this bad association. But despite the bad blood that perhaps developed between cats and suffragists, they really weren't mortal enemies, right? Many suffragists were cat lovers themselves, and there was a beneficial relationship between cats and suffragists. Take, for example, American suffragist Miss Mitchell. She let it be known in an interview with the press that she was pro-suffrage and pro-cats. And she liked athletics too. So she was all around the new woman of the 20th century. And then there's the cat Muggins. Another American suffragist was the proud parent of Muggins, a rather friendly cat. But a male reporter concluded that Muggins was also apparently a suffragist because he snidely noted that Muggins did not like men. And perhaps the most famous story of cats and suffragists is the story of Nell Richardson, Alice Burke, and the cat Saxon. Suffragists were taking back the image of the cat and co-opting it as necessary to present different aspects of their movement. So when Nell Richardson and Alice Burke took off on a cross-country publicity campaign in 1916, they adopted Saxon as their official mascot. And Saxon rode with them all the way across country in a car nicknamed the Golden Flyer. And they delivered suffrage speeches from the back of the car as they traveled across the US. And of course, as you can imagine, Saxon was the star of the show. The association between women and cats did not end with the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Cats were generally depicted from that point on as associated with women, or in this case, with women voting. And in many ways, the cat is still associated with suffrage and suffragists today. If you want to honor the suffrage history of the cat, the National Park Service has created the suffrage cat. I don't know if you've heard of this, but in celebration of the centennial of the 19th Amendment, the National Park Service encourages kids to color, decorate, and bedazzle your very own suffrage cat. And it's not just for kids, you can do it too. And don't forget, you can always buy your plush centennial suffrage cat doll to celebrate the history of suffrage and cats.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. That's a great reminder about the suffrage cat, and just so our audience members know, we have a link to the suffrage cat posted on our Facebook page. You can also Google suffrage cat, and it'll come up pretty early in the hits from the National Park Service. So we have it on our Facebook page as well. We invite people to color one and send and show us their work. Hashtag MUSE WS Celebrate Suffrage, and so we can see it online too. So thank you very much for that. Let's see. I'm gonna go back to screen share really quickly, and say a couple things just to build on that. Let's see. Here we go, and jump ahead. So I was remiss earlier in not stopping on this slide. It should be noted today, since we are in North Carolina, talking about cats on Women's Equality Day. For those who don't know this, one of the oddities of marking today as the 100th anniversary of suffrage when you're in North Carolina is that not everybody realizes that North Carolina did not exactly get ahead of the curve and become one of the first 36 states to ratify the 19th Amendment back in 1920. In fact, it wasn't until 1971 that North Carolina became the second or third to last state to ratify the 19th Amendment. Now, of course, that was immaterial in legal terms. Once the amendment was ratified and certified into the Constitution, it was the law of the land, including for North Carolina. Nonetheless, it's an interesting sidebar story to this anniversary that North Carolina took an extra half century to actually pass the amendment. This is just a little news item from 1971 covering the story of that symbolic ratification of the amendment. The other thing, just Wendy's mention a moment ago of Nell, Alice Burke and Nell Richardson, these two women who made this incredible barnstorming trip in their car called the Golden Flyer across the country. I had been interested in that story when I learned about it not too long ago. And if you're wondering about whether or not they made it through North Carolina on that trip, they in fact did. And these two little news clips from April 13th, 1916 and April 16th, 1916 testify to that. The first is from the Winston-Salem Journal. The Golden Flyer and the two women and the cat did not come through Winston-Salem, best I can tell, but they did go to Raleigh and Charlotte. And so you see the Journal on the 13th reported that across the a couple hours to the east, the Burke and Richardson were expected to come through Raleigh on April 13th or April 12th. And it turns out they didn't make it that quickly. They, as the story goes, got stuck in mud in the Red Hills of Old Virginia and were delayed, but they did eventually make it. As you see on April 16th, we have a report that they had made it for a visit. The other thing I just wanted to add to that is that I'm oh God, there's that weird thing where when you have a background you can't see, but I'm holding, believe it or not, a children's book that is, I'm going to knock off my virtual background so you can actually see the book, and then I'll go back to it. So I'm holding this children's book, Around America to Win the Vote, and it is the subtitle, Two Suffragists, a Kitten, and 10,000 Miles, and it's this by Mara Rockcliffe. I think it was published 2 or 3 years ago, and it is the story of the children's adaptation of the story of Alice Burke and Nell Richardson, and in it, it's quite a lovely book. I recommend it, and in it there is coverage of their troubles in North Carolina. Let's see. Or not their troubles, but it mentioned somewhere else that I think they're getting stuck in Virginia, but there is a page dedicated to their travel through North Carolina. They drove into North Carolina, passing fields of singing birds and butterflies and goldenrod, and so you see them in their Golden Flyer with the kitten on the hood of the car. So this story has traction, as they say. So I just wanted to add that little bit. So with that, I'm going to go back to the gallery view, and want to just go back to, before we move to Rachel's presentation, want to go back to the Cat Cafe. Oh my goodness, look at that! Somebody is sleeping. They are not concerned about this media moment. Just want to go back and see how they're enjoying themselves. And Karen, I thought maybe this would be a good time to ask you a few questions about the Crooked Tail Cat Cafe. First, how does it work? What's the deal with the Cat Cafe?
Yeah, so the Cat Cafe, essentially how I explain it to people as condensed as possible, is essentially a rescue sanctuary. So almost all the cats you see here are up for adoption, with the exception of Miss Tinkerbell, who we are keeping forever. Can't have her, sorry. And how we sustain ourselves is through entry fees, since we're not funded like a public shelter is. So our rate is based on how long you want to spend in our lounge. So the rate's either $5 for 30 minutes or $10 for the hour per person, because we also have to limit the amount of people we allow in our lounge. And I may as well just take you back to our coffee shop real quick. But yeah, there's also an in-house coffee shop. And at my store here in Greensboro, we actually serve wine. I don't have any wine in Winston-Salem, sadly. That's my newer store, so haven't quite gotten that sorted out. But yeah, we have like a selection of snacks. We don't make any food in-house since, you know, we have live animals. But yeah, we got an espresso bar and some drinks and everything. But all your food and drink can come back to the cat lounge. So the whole premise is you just hang out, relax, enjoy yourself, and maybe adopt. But that's in a nutshell what we do.
And the cats are brought directly to you, or you're partnering with?
Yes, I am partnered with a couple of different rescues. The store you're at right now, I work with an organization called Red Dog Farm. And for my other store in Winston-Salem, it's another rescue called Triad Independent Cat Rescue. So they come in through those organizations. Some of them have been pulled from shelters. Some of them are strays that have been pulled into the rescue organization. A lot of them you've seen here tonight are owner surrenders, meaning cats that people can no longer care for whatever reason. I know Winton was an owner surrender. And then Aurora, who's playing up in the curtains still, she was a mama cat. She actually had 3 kittens herself, and she's pretty tiny. But yeah, she's loves to hang out up here. But yeah, they come from all over really, but they're all rescues.
And do you name the cats?
No, sadly, we don't get to name a lot of them. They already come with names. And to be honest, that's kind of one less thing that we have to worry about. And some of the older cats that we get, like Winton here, he knows his name, so I wouldn't really want to change it for him. But I got to name this guy over here. I got to name Sriracha. He was one that I actually foster a lot of the cats at my house prior to coming here. I think I counted in the last 3 years, I've had like 60 cats that have come in and out of my house that I have fostered to help stock the cat cafes. It's been crazy. Wow. Yeah, that's all I do.
What's
rescue cats?
Do you have a favorite adoption story?
Oh, there's been so many. You know, we're closing in on 300 adoptions between my 2 stores, but I wouldn't say there's like one in particular, but there is this cool thing that happens at the cat cafe. Sometimes we get like really, really, really shy cats. And I just imagine them like, you know, being at a shelter, you know, and they never would have been given the chance. Like we had a really shy cat in here, she got adopted about a week and a half ago. And it took her a month to really like settle in. But once she settled in, she was awesome. Like she was super affectionate, super friendly. And we just give cats the opportunity to shine because they're here cage free. And like, I don't know if you can see from the video, but like we have elevated catwalks. So like, honestly, like the place is designed for cats. But also, you know, we have some seating for the people too, but you know, it's really, I do this mainly for the cats, and you know, our tagline is saving cats, creating smiles. So that's really what it is. It's also like cat therapy for some people, and especially with what else going on around us, it's a way for people to come decompress, de-stress, relax, hang out with cats. And honestly, you can come in through my doors and there is zero pressure to adopt one of these animals. We don't actually like to pressure people into adopting. We'd rather let the relationship happen organically. Because it can be a 20-year commitment to adopt one of these guys, and we want people to be sure that it's the animal that they want, and that they'll love and cherish for the rest of their days. So,
Karen, we have a question. We have a question from the interwebs, and you're at the right spot. Our friend Berkeley asks, "Who is the orange kitty?"
This is Miss Mia. She is about 10 years old. She is really friendly. I've actually had her at my house. She was at my house for a few days. She will sleep with you. She likes to cuddle. She likes string toys. Her old owner actually sadly passed away unexpectedly. So she got pretty lucky in that she got to come to us. But she's a really good girl. I hope she gets a good home soon.
Well, maybe Berkeley's interested.
Maybe, yeah. If somebody yeah, go. If somebody is interested in adopting these particular cats, you can apply online through Red Dog Farm, and they do a little screening process just to make sure all the animals are going to good homes and all that. But we would also encourage you to come by and meet the cat prior to taking them home. We want to make sure it's a good fit.
Awesome. So one last question. What's the pandemic experience been like for the Cat Cafe?
Oh, it's ups and downs. It's a roller coaster ride. Like nothing. I mean, we already had pretty strict, sanitation protocols. We already had people sanitize their hands. We already practically bleached everything in our lounge on a daily basis. So it's just, we always wear masks. All of our customers wear masks. Cats don't wear masks, of course, but I don't know. It's just everything is weird. I've had to adjust my business hours so we're not open quite as much as we used to be. But we're just trying to just go with the flow, just like everybody else.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks for what you do. And I know as a Winston-Salemite, we were all so happy when your store opened, and I know my family's been a time or two, and it's just fun just to walk that block because there's usually somebody to say hello in the window. So thanks for being a downtown business owner here in Winston as well. So
yes, you're very welcome.
Let's go to Rachel Corbman now, who's going to talk to us about the role of sort of moving forward in the 20th century. Talk about the role of the cat, the use of the cat as a symbol in later 20th century, particularly lesbian visual culture. Rachel. Oh, you're muted. And I'll go ahead and screen share your slides, and I will take instruction from you.
Okay, yeah, you can go to the next one.
Okay.
So I'm going to be talking about research that came out of my exhibit, The Wide World of Lesbian Cats. And so I'm going to start with, this is Ben Cat. And so in February 1967, there was an article that was written by Ben Cat called The Pre-Post Hominis Memoirs of a Splendid Cat, which was published in The Ladder. And The Ladder was the first nationally distributed lesbian magazine that was founded in 1956. And I'll give a little bit more context about The Ladder in a minute. But so Ben Cat was a real cat. You can see the tuxedo cat on the top, and Ben Cat's also the cover model on the July 1967 issue. And so Ben Cat belonged to Helen Sandoz, who used the pseudonym Sandy, and her partner Stella Russ, who used the pseudonym Sten. And Sandoz was at the time the editor of The Ladder. And so Ben Cat had a regular column in The Ladder and actually joined the advisory board of The Ladder. And he was on the advisory board until he died in December 1969. And then there's a eulogy that's actually printed in The Ladder. And I'll read a little bit of it that says that Stan and Sandy have adopted 2 Burmese kittens, but at this date, it's not yet known if they have literary talent. So that's Ben Cat. And I'm gonna now, you can go to the next slide. I'm gonna put Ben Cat kind of in the broader context of what was going on with DOB. And this slide is, everything on it is, I wrote the descriptions really late at night, so everything is almost historically accurate, and I will explain the slight mistakes on it. So DOB was actually founded in 1955, not 1956. 1956 is The Ladder, by three couples, including Phyllis Lyon and Del Martin. And it was initially imagined as kind of a social club for gay women. And then it kind of morphed into a homophile organization, and homophile is the historically specific way to talk about the gay rights movement that took shape in the 1950s and 1960s in a really politically regressive climate, especially in the 1950s. So The Ladder was founded as their journal in 1956, and then it had a series of different editors. Lyon and Martin were initially the editors, and then Barbara Giddings took it over. And then Helen Sandoz was the editor from 66 to 68. And then finally, in 1968, Barbara Greer took over the ladder. And then in 1970, it's often imagined that she stole the ladder. She severed its relationship from the Daughters of Lytus and moved it from San Francisco to Reno and caused a lot of dissension in the organization. So in how this history is written about in relation to BenCat, BenCat actually makes a cameo appearance on the Wikipedia page of the ladder, which to give, so it's a Wikipedia often has like a general historical consensus of things. So the Wikipedia page cites the editorials by Sandos's cat as exemplary of the kind of apolitical and lighthearted stance of this moment of the ladder, which was then changed dramatically by Barbara Greer in moving it more into a feminist direction. But in looking more closely, you can go back actually.
Oh, sorry.
Almost. But in looking more closely at the ladder, I first of all have pulled images where they all have some kind of cat references in them. But also it seemed like it was an inside joke for all of them. And Barbara Greer, in fact, used to write letters to BenCat as well. And there's a mention of that in the newsletter. So BenCat is right before the historical moment that I'm looking at, but there's a lot of continuity between it in a lot of ways. So yeah, next slide. So I'm specifically looking at this moment in the 1970s and after, which is often imagined as a dramatic shift in gay liberation from the homophile movement to gay liberation, and you also have the emergence of the women's liberation movement at this time. So to give you a little bit of context, it'll be necessary for understanding kind of how the cat was used at this period of time. There's one event in particular that's often looked at as kind of the birth of lesbian feminism, which is Betty Friedan, who was the president of the National Organization for Women, made a statement that lesbians were the lavender menace of the women's movement. And there was also just in general in mainstream press coverage of the women's liberation movement early on, a lot of lesbian baiting. So there was a group of lesbians from both gay liberation organizations and women's liberation organizations that ended up calling themselves the Radical Lesbians, and they interrupted the National Congress to Unite Women that was a NOW event, and all wore Lavender Menace t-shirts. So kind of reclaiming this, what Betty Friedan had critiqued about lesbians as, yes, we are the Lavender Menace. So I have a photo on the slide that's of a bunch of people who were involved in the action meeting together with the cat. It's a bad copy of a Jeb photograph, but you can kind of see the cat in the corner. And then a photo from the action itself. So then that brings us to cats in my exhibit. So you can go to the next slide. So in 2019, I created The Wide World of Lesbian Cats, which was at the Gay and Lesbian Center in New York. And so kind of somewhat similarly to what Wendy was saying with cats and suffrage, cats have a long history of being associated with women, and especially kind of deviant and dangerous forms of femininity. So in the 1970s and afterwards, you see in lesbian feminist visual culture this kind of reclamation of the cat, specifically because of its pejorative associations. So I'm going to quickly move through and give you some examples that kind of move chronologically from print culture in the 70s, comics in the 90s, zines in the comics in the 80s, rather, zines in the 90s, and then digital culture in kind of the long present. So the next slide is just kind of a placer slide that says print culture 1970s. So basically, there was a mass explosion of print culture in the early 1970s. So in 1970 itself, there's 85 new lesbian feminist periodicals. And then 3 years later, that multiplies again to 550 new lesbian feminist periodicals. And this is in contrast to the 1950s, where nationally distributed, it was really only the latter. So these tended to be cheaply produced, mimeographed, put together by these shifting cohorts of volunteers. However, if you look at the periodicals themselves, Agatha Vines, who's written a book on this, has argued that you see a certain kind of repetition of different images or different rhetorical tropes that come up over and over and over again. And cats, I argue, are one of them. And so one of the things that's interesting about it that this slide points out is that there often would be cat content that didn't necessarily even correspond to like what the articles were about, just like you can see like the cats just hanging out over the planning work announcement. So this is from Dyke Quarterly, which is an example of a periodical that started in the 1970s. So you can go to the next slide. So for print culture, I'm just going to give two quick examples of things that I particularly liked that I highlighted in the exhibition. So this is all images from two different periodicals. One, Albatross, which was in New Jersey, and the other, Leaping Lesbian, which was in Michigan. So Albatross had a ton of cat content in it, probably like the most rich example of cat content that I looked at from periodicals at this period of time. And much like actually BenCat, the staff of Albatross, which I have on the slide, features two cats. One is named Ginger, and I'm blanking on the other one's name, but they're listed on the list of staff members. And so like Dyke, Quarterly, Albatross would also have these cats just in the margins hanging out. So what happened was that someone from Leaping Lesbians traced one of the illustrations from Albatross and then reprinted it in their newspaper and forgot to add a citation to where it came from. So then they wrote a letter apologizing, which was then printed in Albatross. And so you can see in the corner a comic that kind of illustrates that as a cat theft, with the cats being taken out of the Albatross office, so literalizing the stealing of the cats. So this kind of playful exchange shows you how these different periodicals across the country, they were all reading each other, and they were all sharing content with each other. So then you can go to the next slide. The second, just fun example. So Atlanta Feminist Alliance had a newsletter that it put out, and they had a cat show that they did every year starting in 1979. So this is the cover image of the first cat show, and then the images are from Sally Bingham Center here in North Carolina, and of the cats that won one of the cat shows, and they got different prizes.
Where is the Sally Bingham Center, Rachel?
Oh, at Duke. So now moving to comics, you can go to the next slide. So one particularly prominent example of lesbian comic artist is, of course, Alison Bechdel. And there's some continuity between the last section of lesbian print culture, because Alison Bechdel actually initially published her comics in lesbian and gay newspapers. So the first Dykes to Watch Out For appeared in Woman News. And so the plate 19 Dykes to Watch Out For was, I believe, the first one, and you can see it has a cat. I kind of like lightly censored it. And then Literary Dykes to Watch Out For is the first full-length comic, which also appeared in Woman News, and again has a cat as well. So Alison Bechdel's comic strip ended up being syndicated in a bunch of different lesbian and gay newspapers. And the initial, for the first plate and also the Literary Dykes to Watch Out For doesn't have the same characters that we associate with the later Dykes to Watch Out For. But as soon as there's a stable set of characters, you have Mo, who's kind of vaguely patterned after Alison Bechdel, and her cats, Virginia and Vanessa. So you can go to the next slide. So Alison Bechdel, of course, became quite famous. Her graphic memoir, Fun Home, came out in 2016, and there was a Broadway show, and Jake Gyllenhaal was working on a movie or something. So she kind of reached mainstream success, which in some ways kind of occludes the existence of this larger community, as Margaret Galvin has argued, of different lesbian comic artists. So I just wanted to briefly highlight Roberta Gregory's Dynamite Damsels, which was self-published in 1976. And similarly, Andrea Natalie also self-published her work. And then Nicole Friends, which was, that one was in an anthology. So a lot of these publications are not in places that are traditionally associated with comics, but instead like self-published kind of proto-zines or different anthologies, which then leads us to actual zines. So you can go to the next slide. So by the 1990s, zines also became a place for the dissemination of comics. So another key example of this is Hothead Paisan, which was by Diane DeMassa, which was self-published by in the 90s, and was kind of through these circuits of underground zines was disseminated. And so it came out in different little like zines over the next 6 years, and then it was eventually collected into the complete Hothead Paisan a bit later. So you can go to the next slide.
All right.
And so for the purpose of my exhibit, I understood zines as self-published work that had connections to DIY punk and riot girl subcultures. So I have another, again, few examples of this. So this is an example of a zine by Tammy Ray Carland, which is a fanzine for Amy Carter. And so the insert has a photo of Amy Carter when she was a young girl with her cat. I also have on the screen a zine that was put together by Anne Svetkovich, who's a famous queer and feminist theorist, and her partner Gretchen Phillips, who's a musician. And it's called Topical Treatments, and it's their writing together. And then also Leanne Franson, which is another example of kind of a comic that was in zine form. And so her cat Butler was featured in all her zines. And then this is one that's called The Adventuresome Life of Butler, which is about Butler's eventual death. And it came out in 1996 and then reprinted because it was, I believe, her most popular zine. And so it was reprinted in 2014. So you can go to the next slide. So I also have an example of a more recent zine that came out in 2016, and it's Morgan C's Cat Moms in Love. And so even though we're now like kind of moving away from this moment in the 1970s, you can start with zines like Cat Mom to see how lesbian and queer and feminist artists are referencing this earlier moment. So you first of all have, like, of course, the recurrent trope of the cat, as this entire presentation has argued, as well as if you look at how Cat Mom is written, the T in Cat Mom is elaborous, which is an act that's associated with lesbian feminism. So you have this kind of referencing of an earlier context. And so then that leads me to digital culture. So you can go to the next one. So Cat Moms in Love was created again in 2016 and sold on C's website. And so she's not alone in kind of this use of the internet to circulate what Elizabeth Freeman would call cultural debris of lesbian feminism. So the one example that I'll highlight here is, I have it on the slide, a Instagram post by Herstory, which is a popular Instagram by Kelly Rakowski that uses images that are related to lesbian culture that she sources either from archives or the internet, and then she has Instagram posts about them. So, for example, this was the post that I have, the woman with the two cats. That's from, it's a photograph from a book called Cats in Their Dykes, which was an anthology put together by Irene Reddy and came out in 1991. And so you see this again referencing this earlier context that's recirculating on the internet. So basically, my exhibit starts with 1970s itself and then moves to this present moment where you have this recirculation of lesbian feminism through digital culture and these references to earlier contexts.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to, I'm not ending the program. Great, I'm gonna stop the share. Oh yeah, there we go. For a moment, and just want to mention to folks out on Facebook that if you have any questions or for anybody that you want to ask, now's a good time to post them, and Alana will get them to me. But Karen, I wanted to go back to you. One question also that I had scribbled down here was, can you tell us? I mean, as I was reading your bio about, you know, that you just, you know, you're obviously a devotee of cats. What is it about cats that drew you in and have led you to dedicate such a big part of your life to their welfare?
You know, I don't know what it is about cats. I actually grew up with a dog when I was a child, and then somewhere in grad school, I was living with my best friend at the time, and I was like, can we like get a cat? And that was close to 10 years ago now, and it's just been, you know, I was done for after that. I just realized how like affectionate they are. They're really gentle creatures, but they're so much fun. I don't know. And I just turned into a crazy cat lady. I'm unashamed in that. Obviously, I have 2 cat cafes and I'm responsible for like 30 cats at any point in time. But I don't know. And they just need our love and attention. You know, I have a dog too. We just adopted a dog a couple of weeks ago. He's a hot mess right now. I just had some surgery. So I like dogs too, don't get me wrong. But like, as far as like the cat problem and getting cats adopted and the amount of cats that are on the street that are suffering is far greater than the dog issue. And so the cat cafe also kind of highlights that too. I do this mainly for the cats. I mean, you come into my store and you know, and you come to talk to me and you know, I'm like devoted to these creatures. I live, eat, and breathe this. And people ask me, how the heck did I get it started? I'm like, well, literally, do you want to know? It was blood, sweat, and tears is what it was, and my life savings. But I don't know. There's just I saw the concept back in 2011 on like YouTube or something, and I wasn't ever gonna actually do it. And then I got involved in some startups that didn't quite pan out. And I was, you know, getting ready to turn 30 or so. And I was like, well, what am I going to do with my life? It's now or never. So I just went for it because all my friends were like, well, Karen, you've been talking about it for like 10 years. Why don't you just do this crazy cat cafe idea? And people definitely didn't believe in the concept at first. It was a totally new thing to North Carolina, but I've been here at my Greensboro store for 3 years. My new store in Winston just crossed the 1-year mark. So hopefully we'll be able to weather through this COVID mess and keep seeing everybody, keep saving cats. We've saved close to 300 between my 2 stores since we've been opened. So we've been pretty successful in getting these adoptions done. And we've done actually a lot of adoptions of older cats, overweight cats, cats with medical issues, cats that would have been that if they were in a shelter would have been very, very difficult to adopt. But people can come in, they can meet them, they can see them in a more home-like environment. We're not, you know, exactly like a home, but we're closer than any sort of shelter that you would get because they get to live here cage-free. And at night they aren't caged either. But I don't know. I just love him. I love him so much, obviously.
Rachel and Wendy, a question sort of for both of you. I find the whole story of the, you know, the cats repurposing as an icon of 2 related, you know, related in some ways, but, you know, just discrete movements is fascinating. Do you, and you may have gestured toward this, but I guess, Rachel, do you, and to the extent you have a view of this, Wendy, feel free to offer your thoughts. Does it, as lesbians incorporated cats into their visual culture and identity in the way that your exhibit suggests, were they aware of the cats, of the history of the cats association with early feminism? Was that part of it, or just coincidence? How would you I don't know, explain that?
It doesn't seem to be a conscious point of reference, at least as far as I can tell. I saw a lot more imagery related to like witches, for example. That seemed very intentional, like the cultural association with witches, and then kind of the way in which that was repurposed by lesbian feminists.
Wait, can you back up? That's I know we're not here to talk about witches, but that's interesting. What's the witches reference?
So witches are kind of thought to have cats, and there's also an interest in different alternative forms of spirituality. So they're both like, I'm sure it like goes much more than like the kind of surface, like how there's like, for example, there's an issue of Focus that has like, and it doesn't have anything in the issue about this, but just for Halloween it had a witch and a cat on it, so it was both like kind of in some ways a very typical thing to have for a Halloween issue, but like that was playing on the relationship between witches and cats.
Wendy, do you have any thoughts on that? Sorry.
No, I didn't. I was curious what the connection was, if they recognized it as. This is interesting to hear.
I mean, I guess one just curiosity I had was whether it's the use of the cat in the anti-suffrage movement is actually kind of playing with the notion of the cat as somehow opposed to men, right? Oppositional to men. And so I'm just working this out of my mind, but it makes me wonder: is there more, in some ways, more of a connection between the anti-suffrage use of the cat, right? That, I mean, that caricature of the cat as somehow a force of opposition or rejection of men, and the lesbian use of the cat, or whether it's more specifically the picking up of the feminist thread that runs through both.
I think it's probably more similar in some ways to the anti-suffrage usage, as ironic as that is, that it was specifically embracing kind of the pejorative qualities of a cat, and separating that in a way that was much more typical of the 1970s than it was of the context Wendy's working with.
Can you also just, I want to note we're coming up on an hour, or just past the hour, so we'll draw this to a close in a moment, but I think it's also really interesting the glimpses of zine culture and comics culture that you showed us in your presentation, Rachel. What is that zine culture? I mean, where was it located, and how did those images circulate in the 70s through 90s that you just talked about?
So zine culture is kind of probably most closely associated with different cities that are associated with to kind of track the way in which the history of feminist zines is typically written. So centers of like riot girl culture, so Olympia, Washington, for example, DC, for example. But zine culture is purposefully diffuse. It's in some ways kind of similar to 1970s print culture, in that like it just 1970s it's like collectives of people versus 1990s it's individual feminists, like me and my friends had a feminist zine later that we
Yeah.
just distributed to our high school, for example.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to like kind of create a systematic history of zines because it's purposely diffuse. And it was also in a lot of ways the most difficult part of the exhibition, kind of as well as digital culture to research because of how diffuse it is. Like there was a proliferation of like 1970s periodicals, but it was a manageable amount of periodicals that I could look through a bunch of them and find cats, as opposed to it's overwhelming to try to like survey all the zines.
Yeah.
So I gave up and just was trying to like look for different zines that were representative of different things that I wanted to highlight in the exhibition.
Yeah. Well, it's really, I mean, what you showed us is indicative of what a rich, to the extent that you can, as a historian, you can lay your hands on that source material. What a rich repository of stuff to work with. So so it's fascinating. Yeah.
The exhibition, let alone the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank both of you, Wendy and Rachel, for the two really enlightening presentations that allowed us to. Rachel knows that the origins of this program was that I became just aware through social media that you had done a little bit of thinking about this, the image of the cats, and then thanks to Rachel for connecting us with Wendy as well to really bring this program full circle. Karen, I'll ask the last question of you, which is, do you have any indication that cats are aware of their status as feminist icons?
You know, I don't know. They probably do. They're pretty smart. So I wouldn't, I'd bet money on it.
I think that's the right answer. That's my sense too. I think I have two cats at home who are watching this program, I think. And I think this just confirms what they already thought. So
absolutely.
So I really want to thank y'all for participating in this event and sort of, you know, we reached out not too long ago and this came together really quickly. We really wanted to do it on this day, on the 26th. There's so much great, you know, there's so much great thought and articles and programs going on right now to honor this important day, this important anniversary in American history, and also to not let this day pass without noting the ways that the 19th Amendment was not the end all and be all, that it was a threshold event, but with so much work to still be done. And you know, and I really appreciate how you've helped us approach this day in a, you know, in a kind of from the side and in a counterintuitive way. And I hope folks at home have enjoyed the kind of playful approach to this day. Thank you to my colleague Alana, who just posted a question to me saying, Karen, you might want to tell folks if there's an easy way to donate to the Cat Cafe and support the work you do.
Yes, I don't know if they're looking to donate like cat supplies or if they're looking for like monetary donations. Honestly, I tell people the best way to support us is to come visit our lounge. But currently, I know a lot of people are maybe uncomfortable coming out, which is totally understandable. I've actually, I still have my COVID fundraiser up. You have to like scroll through my Facebook, but I've thought about reposting it to the top again since, you know, this whole thing has gone on much longer than anybody ever could have anticipated. But we also do have an Amazon wish list. I really like for people to purchase what's on there because sometimes we get food donations that we can't always necessarily use. We have to give them to a different rescue because we like to keep the cats on the same kind of kibble. Otherwise, they can develop, you know, dietary things if we try to change things up on them too much. But if you're looking to help our cats directly, our Amazon wish list, which is on our website, is a great place to look for like cat supplies, cat food, cat toys, anything else that we may be in need of.
Great. Well, Alana is also mentioning to me, why don't you send us the link to that wish list, and we'll be happy to post it on our Facebook page too, to make it easy for folks to find. Wendy and Rachel, if you have Amazon wish lists that you want us to share with the nation, we'll do that too. Okay, but I'm gonna go ahead and pitch that folks should put their emphasis on helping the Cat Cafe first. So thank you to the three of you, mostly to all of our folks in the audience. I think I was watching the Facebook numbers, and it seemed like we were hovering in the high 30s, around 40 for much of the evening. So, and then once I started talking and the cats went off screen, things started to fall apart. So, so thank you for being here, and happy Women's Equality Day. The 5 hours left. You got more on the West. You got 8 hours left, Wendy. Good luck with I know there's fires out near where you are, so good luck with that, and good night, everybody. I'm gonna hit